everybody. It's 2 o'clock. Welcome to Founders for Schools Digital webinar, and we are delighted to welcome you all on this call this afternoon. And a particular welcome to Catherine Cooper and to Chris. Oh, I actually struggle to pronounce your surname. and to Chris, and thank you very much for joining us today. We're excited to learn a lot about you in the next 45 minutes. Just a bit of a briefing as to how this webinar is set up. So we will take 7 minutes around to listen to Chris and 7 minutes to hear about Catherine's story, and they will both share with us what they are doing, what they have been doing in their career so far, and what are the skill sets they needed to get where they are today. We will then be opening up the session to all of you who are listening today, and you will see you have a question and answer function where we invite you to ask as many questions as you would like to address to Chris and Catherine. So please use your questions from the word go. I will be addressing them as soon as we open up the webinar and to answer all these questions. When you do ask the questions, please make sure that you either anonymize your questions so that we don't see your full name, or you just give us your age and the city where you are dialing in from. So, well, I think that's for housekeeping. So welcome and enjoy. And I would love to start straight away. So Chris, you have been working in sales for a long time, and you are currently working for a company called Miconex.
Yes, yes.
So it's quite interesting to see how you describe yourself. You said you are dedicated to help people realize the power that great technology can have on communities. So these are massive words, and I'm very excited to hear what does that actually mean? What is it you do, and how do you help communities? So please take the next couple of minutes and let us know all about you.
Yeah, so from my aspect, what we do is about sharing all the latest inventions and all the possible capabilities that have come across and been developed over the past 10, 15 years, and actually making sure that not just the major cities in San Francisco and New York actually have that capability. But it's actually, communities are all around us. I live in a small village in Scotland in Dunkeld, and it is from my side, it's absolutely critical that no one is left behind, because this technology is out there and available for everyone to use. So my role has been predominantly of making sure that many of you are using school apps. I've been part of getting 40% of Scotland's parents using school apps, because do we really need a letter in the post anymore? A letter in a bag? It's a waste of paper. I'm also now involved in a company, and our role is about helping communities spend locally to get people back out on the high street and actually spending the money only in the butchers and there, rather than at times massive different companies. So making sure that when I go into Dunkeld, I can go into the bakery and get a nice croissant, I can go into the butcher and get a nice steak for tea. So that's basically what I do, and it's helping people realize that this technology isn't all up in the cloud. It can be down at local level as well.
Oh, very interesting. Very interesting. And it's actually quite interesting to hear how you mobilize. Now, may I call it mobilizing local community to support local community with means of technology. And I think that's a really interesting approach you're using there. And quite interesting to hear later maybe a little bit more about how our current situation of making local communities mobile, how you're affected on that end, and how you're actually dealing with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm more than happy to talk to you about that and how busy we are at the moment.
Perfect. So I think you brought a little presentation along which you would like to share. Do you want to do that now?
Yeah, that would be great.
Oh, it's taking a while, but we'll be patient. There you go. I think we can all see the presentation now. Please go ahead. Chris, we are all in. Hello? I think we may have a little an issue with the audio. Chris, can you still hear us?
You're on mute, Chris.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yes, now, welcome back. You were just on mute there. So if you could start your presentation now, Chris, we weren't able to hear you. We can see your presentation nicely now. Chris? We can hear your side noises. Now you're back again. So we saw your slide deck. We couldn't hear you, unfortunately. We still cannot hear Chris. Chris, we come back to you in a second. Catherine, may I ask you to take over for now until Chris has sorted his audio issues, and I think we can get back to Chris in a minute.
Fine. Okay. So, so do you want me to start my presentation, or?
And maybe you just say a couple of words to who you are and what you do and how you engage. And because again, I think you have a very interesting title. You're working for 2 companies at the moment. You're a director for both Vatic Cooper Limited and the GCR community. And I think, again, it's quite hard to understand what is hidden behind those big titles. So if you could just start off with giving us a little bit of an insight to you, and then I'm very happy for you to start your presentation.
Well, hi, my name is Catherine Cooper, and I do have 2 companies running at the moment, but my reason for being, my reason for working is that I want to create employment opportunities for people. And I want to look at, I too work in communities, community energy in particular, and I'm wanting to try and utilise technology for the benefit of those communities. So Chris and I, in a way, are in very, very similar roles, and we're just coming at it from a different angle. Now, while Chris is a business development manager, I'm actually an innovator. And what that means is that I solve problems for a living. So people like Chris will come to me and say, I want to put this solution into a village, but I don't know, we need to do it for this cost. And oh, by the way, we might have Wi-Fi issues. And I work with the teams of different academics, specialists, legal people, and try and pull it all together and make it work. So I solve problems for a living, and I get paid for it.
That's exciting. That's exciting. Solving problems. I mean, again, I think when we open up to questions, I'm sure there will be a couple of questions coming. How do you identify those problems, and how do you actually come up with solutions? So I'm curious to see all the questions coming in to find out more about that. Catherine, if you would like to share your presentation now, I think that would be great. And please make sure you are unmuted once the slides are up so that we can hear you.
Okay, let's try it. Now, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Perfect. Please go on.
Okay, so so when I grew this, the title of the presentation is When I Grow Up. So I wanted to take you just on a wee journey about where I started and how I got into sort of the work that I do, and why I decided to become an innovator. So if we can use the technology, that would be a start.
You should be just able to use your slide.
Yeah.
Yep,
so this is me. So let's start with me. So I'm 54 years old. I have got 2 grown-up children and a dog called Archie. Now, Archie is very good at joining in my work's conversations at the moment, so I will apologise in advance. Okay, if he decides to come in, we might have to put the camera on him. So I grew up in a village called Glenboig in North Lanarkshire, and this is it here, and you can just about see my house at the back of the hall there. So this is where I grew up, and this is a very, as you can see, it's a very industrial landscape, and that's because in about the late 1800s, there was a very important man in the village who came up with some patents, and patents are very good because they protect designs, and those designs were for this thing here, which is a brick. Now, Glenboig bricks were famous throughout the whole world, and for being the brick that you used when you had very high temperatures in furnaces. Now, because that man came up with those ideas to make that brick, it employed hundreds of people. And you can see here how busy it was. Now, if you went to the village nowadays, that's all been knocked down and it's been built up with different houses, etc. So the industry has gone, but the legacy lives on. So, and part of his legacy is for people like me who have been inspired by innovators, and I have become one myself. And that means that I get paid for solving problems. Now, my career has taken me through all sorts of engineering design, starting with aircraft, moving on to performance cars. Then this one here is quite a wee bit of a change because this is me going into renewable energy, and this is a district heating scheme. And now I've now set up my own company, and now what we're looking at is solutions to how we get heat from water. Okay, so that's what I'm up to. So why did I become an innovator? Now I'm very conscious I didn't put my timer on here, Michaela, so
you're fine.
Tell me when I get run out of time.
Yes.
So
2 minutes.
So this started, my journey towards becoming an innovator started when I was just really young. And I think this is something that we should all look at when we choose our careers and where we want to go in life. If I go back to here's me, and this is me just first day at primary school, and I look back at what makes me happy at that time. Now, I was really, really happy just lying in a field on my back, spending time watching the clouds. But that sounds as if, okay, what were you doing? You're just a dreamer. But what's very, very important when you become an innovator or when you want to look at innovation as a career is you have to be able to clear your mind and you have to be able to come up with new ideas. And the best way to do that is to spend time just thinking. Okay, so that's something that I'm able to do and I've been able to do since I've been a very small girl. The other thing I really enjoyed doing when I was younger was making things. Now, in those days, it was mostly daisy chains and rose perfume, but I've always been interested in how things work. Now, about when I got a wee bit older, when I was about 10 years old, that sometimes got me into trouble. Mostly, I think one event I can remember really clearly is when I took my mum's Hoover apart and couldn't put it back together again. And at that point, I thought maybe engineering's something that I'm quite interested in. And the other thing that really defined me is I love playing with water. I've always spent time in water, around water, watching the environment, watching how water flows. And you might say, well, so what? But actually, that's really important for the work that I'm doing just now.
That's great. I think that's very insightful. And I think maybe a couple of final sentences you want to add, Catherine, before I hand back over to Chris.
Okay, so my journey has been varied. I have, well, one thing I want to say is, interestingly enough, when I was in primary school, I thought I was rubbish at maths. I don't know where I got that idea, but I thought I was really poor at it. And then suddenly, when I went to secondary school, I realised actually I was quite good at it. And by the time I went to university for the first time, and I've been to university 4 times, which you can ask questions about, but the time I went to Heriot-Watt University in the 80s, I went and studied engineering, where maths was very much part of my degree. And one of the things I want to finish by saying is I have been influenced greatly by the past. And as an innovator, you want to know what's happened in the past so that you can come up with ideas for how you can improve it in the future. And this man here is a guy called James Clerk Maxwell. And James Clerk Maxwell was, he grew up in Dumfriesshire. And he is the man that Einstein actually refers to when he says the person that's influenced him most. And what you might not know about him is he was actually called Dafty at school, right? Now, and he has had one of the most influential, his work has had one of the most influential effects on our society in the 21st century. So anyway, I think we'll leave this slide to the end, Michaela, about who will you become, okay? And if I finish there and hand back to Chris.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Catherine. I think that will hopefully have triggered a lot of thoughtful questions when we open them up just in a couple of minutes. Chris, are you back in speech mode?
Yes, I am.
Very nice. Shall we try again with your presentation? If I could ask you to keep to 4 minutes now with your presentation, please, because I would really like to give everybody the opportunity to kick off with questions.
Great. So basically, my name's Chris. I work for a company called Miconex in Perth. I was asked the question of why I'm successful in business, and I would say it's because I've had heroes since a very young age. So today I just thought I'd share one of them with you. So first of all, I just wanted to wonder, what makes a hero? What things do you think? I think it's a really important thing that everyone thinks about on this side, because you do need to pick the right person for the right reasons. So for me, a hero must be brave, they must work hard, and they've got to learn from their mistakes. But the biggest thing about heroes is that they're meant to inspire you. So I'm just going to play a short video now of one of my heroes. It's just a minute and a half.
There's no such feeling as getting to the river. She's always and she'll always be stronger. You'll get smashed, you'll get beat down once in a while, and it's crazy, it's scary, it's addictive, it's humbling. The river makes you feel insignificant and yet so free. But behind kayaking, behind the magic of whitewater, there's the journey itself, the amazing places you get to see, the people you travel with, the ones you meet on your way, and the experiences you get to share with them. The good times, as well as the hard times, because it's about all the stories, all the memories you bring back with you.
So yes, that is my hero. One of my heroes, Nora Newman. She's a French kayaker. And some of you may be asking, well, what really can I get out of this in order to help me business-wise? And really, she teaches me that learning never really stops. Now, as a kayaker myself, I'm nowhere near as good as Nora. But every time you go out in the river, you're learning something new. And actually it's exactly the same in the business world every day, and especially at the moment, I'm learning new and different things as well. She quite often messes up and takes a little swim, or goes upside down and needs to come back up again. And what that really teaches me is it's okay to fail, and we just need to fail well and just really try our hardest in order to achieve that. It also teaches me that we can be as great at business as we want, but life isn't always necessarily easy at times. And actually, it's more about the journey, than anything else. I think from that side, we're constantly evolving and moving on. So I'd just like to finish off my segment by saying, pick some heroes. It's really important, because you need to have inspiration with whatever you do, to do it with passion, and you'll enjoy your work a lot more if you do it with passion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. I have to say I loved that video. I personally did. It actually spoke to me. So I can see why you have chosen her as your particular hero. So yeah, but having said that, so we actually have some questions coming through now, and if I can just ask you, we have quite a nice audience today, so please don't hold back with your questions. It's your opportunity to ask, and I will make sure that we get them all answered in time. So I will just kick off now, and some of the questions are directed to either Chris or yourself, Catherine, and others are more, I think, actually very worthwhile for you both to answer, if I may say, because I think they are quite inspirational. So let's kick off with Chris. So the very first question we had in was, what inspired you to take this particular career path? So what was it that triggered you to go down that route?
So as you can probably tell, I'm a millennial, and from my side, we were on the forefront of a new technological wave coming through. So for me, there was part of, wow, I can't code. That's not in my skill set. My maths isn't good enough, though I can code at best. You need a lot of maths to be really good at code. And I don't have that, but I wanted to be part of this. So for me, it was really actually, I love talking to people. I love working with people and helping and solve problems. But actually, but actually, it's more about being involved with a fantastic new area, an area that's not going away. Yeah.
And it's actually interesting, if I just may add to that, because a lot of the technologists actually do need people who bring the communication skills you're referring to on the boards to help them communicate what their ideas and their technology is all about. So I can see, so there's a lot of room for people, as you say, like yourself, who may not be the computer scientists, but still wanting to be part of that industry to really help them blossom and take those steps of growth.
Oh, absolutely. Many of the people that write the code could be better at communicating.
No, so that's really good to know. And and a question, I'm trying to play it one by one, so we can get both of you equally engaged. And I have quite a few questions to go through now, so I'm going to keep to the ball now. Catherine, what skills do you need to be an innovator?
I think the main skill for me is you have to be open-minded. So you have to be able to challenge things and challenge your mindset all the time. So I think in terms of what we might talk about in secondary education, when you talk about having a growth mindset, that's very important for being an innovator. You have to be a good communicator, and you have to be a team player, because no one person has all the answers. Okay, you have to be prepared to fail, as Chris says, and as it said in the video, is we don't always get it right first time. But above all, I think to be a good innovator, you have to be resilient, because I hear the word no more than I do yes. I get people telling me, you can't do that. And I have to go back all the time and say, why not? Why not? And get to the root cause of why people believe that we can't do things. But in terms of actual disciplines, or do you need to go to university? As I said, I've been to university 4 times, but not all at the taxpayer's expense, you'll be glad to know. I've paid for 2 of them myself. But basically, you don't need to go to university, but what you do need to do is you need to know your subject well. So I happen to be an engineering-based innovator. If I wanted to go into education and be an innovator in education, it would be a good idea to know the educational sector. And you look at people like Richard Branson. Now, sometimes there's all sorts of different innovators, and people in this country use words like entrepreneur, researcher, inventor, interchangeably with innovators. And it's true that they all have different sort of skills that they bring to things, but they also innovate as part of their job. So really, in answer to your question, there is no specific skill set. It's more about attitude and state of mind.
Just adding to the state of mind, I have a question here that says, could you, Catherine, define growth mindset, and why do you think a growth mindset is important?
Well, it comes back to this thing about being able to have the strength in your own beliefs and be able to be open to opinions from others, but still go back to what it is that you believe to be true. Because people challenge you all the time. In terms of growth mindset, it's more about looking outwards and being able to embrace change. Things now, for example, if I look at the world as it was when I graduated from Heriot-Watt in 1988, now I went into an industry where there was punch cards. I had to run programs overnight on batch jobs on big, huge computers that filled the room. And here I am, I'm still working in a similar role, but I now have all that power at my fingertips and I can get things done instantaneously. So you have to be able to, for me, growth mindset's about being able to move with the times, be able to take opinions from other people, and to be able to adopt and adapt. So, but resilience is key. And I do fail quite a lot of times, but I think the important thing is not to learn from it and not to make the same mistake twice. One of the things as well for me is being able to recognize that failure and to get feedback, and not to be scared of it. We all fail.
Well, there are nice sayings around innovation, is you don't consider something that doesn't work as a failure. You just consider it as a way that you learned that it doesn't work, and you will find another way to make it work.
Yes, just an iteration. I think Dyson is the one that everybody quotes, isn't he? He says, I didn't have 2,000 failures, I had 2,000 experiments.
Exactly. So which I think it's a really and it says a lot about the mindset of innovation, doesn't it? Because with the second or third failure, you may say, well, why should I bother? But whilst you take it as an experiment to come to your ultimate, to achieve your goal, then I think you keep on going. So it's your resilience you've just quoted. Moving on. So I have a couple of questions around your university choices. A, why 4 times? B, what did you study? And I think, Chris, I would be equally interested in your pathway around university, because I think they're equally important. So if I would like to start with Chris, and then Catherine, if you could go into the details as to why 4 times, what did you do, and why did you do it? Chris, your platform.
Yeah, so for me, sort of, I went to university in St Andrews and I studied modern history. And whilst at the moment, sort of, you might be thinking, well, I work in technology, how does history gain sort of, what it gave me was an ability to look at a problem in depth and study it and learn and take on a huge amount of information. Now, I've met some really bright, clever people that have never been to university, and I've met some people who are really bright and clever and been to university. But it gives you opportunity to grow mentally for another couple of years, sort of, and that is really useful. I think that I've learned just as many lessons from university and business life as I there. I went back and did stuff with Harvard last year, sort of, because if you're going to spend money on something, then sort of, get the best that you can afford or that you can do, and it's hard. I hadn't done stuff for about 15 years at university, and suddenly I was in, the atmosphere is very different than what you'll find in school. So for instance, we had to get up and do a quick presentation, for 2 minutes, and then the job of all of the other people in your class was to rip your argument apart and why it wouldn't work. And going back to Catherine's point about resilience, you are going to hear no a huge amount of times, and actually you need to be able to take that on the chin and move on and just go, actually, sometimes I do need to listen to it, but other times I don't. And I think that's really important to get across.
Thank you. Catherine.
So why did I go 4 times?
So why 4 times? And what did you do? So what did you study?
Picking up on Chris's point, you never stop learning. Okay, so you never stop learning. And I think I started off my career very technically biased, because obviously I'd gone to study engineering, and that was a choice because basically I was really good at maths and physics, and I wanted to continue that on. So that was why I chose engineering in the first place. And also, as you know, as I've said, when I was a young girl, I've always been interested in how things work. Now, the second time I went back, that was because I was moving more into management at that point, but also because I had taken a career break with my children. So I had stopped working for 5 years, and in that time the internet had happened. So I felt as if I was a wee bit rusty. So I went back and I studied an MSc in Technology and Innovation Management. Because by that time I was really interested in how good teams work, how are innovations managed from having testing in a lab somewhere out into actually selling the product. So that's what I studied for a year at University of Stirling, and that was actually probably one of the most enjoyable times I had in my life, actually, because it's great being actually being a mature student, because you just know so much more. But then I went back. So I had gone the second time I went, actually, that was the third time I went, but I went to University of Lancaster when I worked for British Aerospace, and that was a specific course in project management for engineers. That was a diploma I did there, and it was work based, but very practical, and how to get to know different types of people. And I think there's a question about what would you tell your 13-year-old self, and if I can just address that one of the things was I was a bit weird at school, in terms of I think differently, and it actually took me till I was about 43 to realise that actually thinking in pictures is not something that everybody does. So what I would tell my 13-year-old self is it's okay to be weird, because weird is good, especially in the innovation world, because it means you think differently, and that's where creativity comes from. So and the fourth time I went was just recently. I went last year before, to learn about secondary education. And I went to the University of Dundee. And the reason I did that is because I think the next disruptive innovation, there's two broad types of innovation. There's incremental, which means you just improve things as you go. And there's a disruptive stuff, which is like you just completely change things. And I think that education is about to go through disruptive change. And I wanted to be part of that. So I needed to learn about how we do things just now.
And that's actually underpinning, again, your innovative spirit, to say you want to be part of that next disruption, and making it happen, and not watching it from the outside, but being part of it from the inside out. Very interesting. Actually, Chris, I would love to pass that question on to you as well. And actually, there's a second one coming alongside with that. So what would be the advice you would give your 13-year-old self? I would love to hear your answer to that, and just as much. And then the follow-on question, what advice would you give to a young person who has no idea what they would like to do in future, and where would you recommend them to start? So first, what is the advice you would give your 13-year-old self? And then the second question, what advice would you give a young person now who's at the very, very beginning and not quite yet sure what to do?
Okay. So advice for 13-year-old me. The race is long. The race is long. So I was I was pretty average at school. I was pretty middle of the pack, nothing out of the ordinary, from that side. And you saw, some people who are the captains, and some people all sorts. And I just it doesn't matter. It's just about, you've just got to keep on going. You've just got to keep on chugging away. And actually, it might take a long time for you to find your place. So don't feel, if you're 13, don't feel lost. Okay, it will you know, it's a short amount of time, and try and focus on not what's happening at the weekend or tonight or tomorrow. It's about looking further ahead and going, well, actually, I'm you know, everything is temporary. And in answer to question B, so if you've got no idea what you're doing, that's okay. What's for you won't go past you. So I wanted to be a primary school teacher, and that's why I went to university. And then I discovered that I then went and worked in the outdoors and really enjoyed that for a couple of years. And actually, the skills that gave me, you don't necessarily know which path you're going to take in life. And actually, for me, I really needed those skills, because at times, if you can communicate with somebody effectively and notice whether they're listening, or whether they're starting to go to sleep or not, or whether their voice is monotonous and slow and boring, etc., that's really important skills to gain, and certainly has helped me greatly. And also manage stress as well. We talk about resilience, we talk about stress. You know, when things have gone wrong, they can be very stressful times. But actually, if we look at, well, I've got a huge amount of work on at the moment, yes, that is stressful, but there is a balance to life. So that would be that what's for you won't go past you.
That's so actually you mentioned, you gave me just such a nice couple of teasers here, which are leading straight into the next two questions. And again, so I have to be mindful of time. We have 9 more minutes, and I actually have another 14 questions to be answered. So we have to be a bit, please answer them as good as as deep as you feel need to, but please be mindful, because I would love to keep them all answered. So one question following on your sessions, and I will play them, one to you, Chris, and one to Catherine. So Chris, how do you keep motivated then? You talked about, and both of you actually, you talked about all the failures you had to go through, and all the lessons you learned,
so for me, sorry, I lost you slightly.
No, go on.
For me, in terms of keeping motivated, at times, I use music, of where I will have 5 or 10 minutes worth of music. I'll listen to it and do something completely different, and then come back, because at the end of the day, somebody might not have got that particular thing. And this happened this morning. You can't let anything get in your way. You've got your goal, you have to go to it, and sometimes you get knocked back, and you've just got to have a mindset of just going, I'm going to do this, and not give up.
Very I think that's a very good advice as to how we can keep motivated. Actually do something very different in places, and just kind of take a step back, do something that really inspires you, and then you find strength in that to go back to keep on going. Catherine, there's a lot, obviously in innovation, I'm sure there are lots of moments where you get really stressed, or where you feel there's a lot of pressure and stress coming up on you. How do you manage stress?
Well, I don't actually get a lot of stress, to be honest, because I have learned to like Chris says, I've learned to let things roll over me a bit. I think you have to decide, you have to remember that things aren't personal. It's just part of the process. There's a lot of time management pressure, and I think I still really need to learn to be more disciplined about my time management, but I'm learning. So what motivates me though, and what keeps me going, is I love my job. I have been an engineer for 30 years, and I have never been bored. However, my head does hurt sometimes, and that's when I have to take a break. If my head's really hurting and I can't get to a solution, or I maybe have got to find a way of trying to talk differently to different team members to motivate them, then I'll go for a walk. I'll go out and sometimes I eat chocolate, have to admit.
I have to say, I that's the way I like to deal with stress. If it's get too much pressure, I take a step back and go for a walk, or I play the piano actually, because that suddenly it tunes me into white and black keys as opposed to all the problems that surround me, and that gives me, like yourself, Chris, music, and gives me the strength to go. So thank you very much for that, Catherine. Actually, following on your engineering career, Kath, there's a question around what was it like, or what is it like being and working in engineering as a female, because obviously still, unfortunately, the majority of engineers is still a male, and although I think engineering is an amazing career for women alike, how did you experience or how do you experience being a female engineer? Did that ever bother you?
I think when I first went into engineering, I was a bit of a rarity, and there was quite a few. There was comments there are comments that you have to deal with. It's not so much now. Now it's the workplaces are much more accommodating and a much more sort of diverse place. I have never felt as if it has hindered me in any way. In fact, if anything, I think it's been to my benefit, because I have maybe come at things with a different sort of approach. It's a very, very rewarding career, and it's something that you can manage as a woman, even if you're wanting to have family and take a career break, as I have done. And actually, my niece went into aeronautical engineering, and she's 28 now, and she went into aeronautical university in Glasgow, and again she helps a lot of female engineers now. I worked a lot with women into science and engineering as well. I think the thing is to not see it as being any different. You're just a person. You're just a person who's very good at these particular skills. So, and go for it. I would say go for it. And not all engineers have hard hats. I didn't get a hard hat until I moved to SSE in Perth when I was, 40-ish?
And I think that's a very important point you're raising here. There are a lot of engineering fields, and they're not all with hard hats. And I think it's understanding what kind of engineering is something you as a young person enjoy, and to find the right niche in which you want to develop. And actually, I think that's irrespective whether you're a girl or whether you're a boy. It's just understanding that the fields are actually quite wide. That I'm going. I'm really pleased we have an immense number of questions. Chris, what have you failed at, and how did you turn it into failing well?
That's a really good question. So I will take you back. I would take you back many years to school, and obviously you can probably tell from my accent, I did a slightly different type of exam, but I did an exam in economics. And the first year that I took it, I got a U. Which is an ungradable. It was that bad. And the lesson I learned from it is that failure is failure. But in terms of failing well, what I learned from it was that actually I wasn't going to let it beat me. So I took the exam again a year later, and got an A. So I'd gone from one end of the spectrum to the other, and so I would describe that as failing well, because it also taught me that sometimes you don't get it in a year, and that actually you might need to go over it several times for it to sink in. So yeah, I hope that's it.
And it's actually a really nice example you gave, which leads us into the next question. So how do you think or do you believe that events from your childhood will or can affect our career paths in the future? And that's a question I actually would like to give to both of you, and that will lead into the next couple of questions. But please be brief.
Yes.
I think, for me personally, yes, there are some things in my childhood, without going into lots of detail. But I would also say no at other times. I know certainly from some of my friends as well, some of them have always wanted to be doctors, were doctors since they, wanted to be a doctor or a nurse since they were 8 years old. how at the other time there's other of us which, you know, for me, the majority of my friends were usually on our second career by now. So just because you choose one path at 18 doesn't necessarily mean by the time you get to 30 that actually you're better off going in a different direction.
Okay, Catherine, I would actually like to change your question slightly. What was your first job and how did it change your future?
My first job was as a design engineer in the aerodynamics department at British Aerospace, designing military aircraft. And how it changed my future was it made me realise the type of engineer I wanted to become. It made me realise that I wanted to use my problem solving and innovation, and I moved fairly quickly from aerodynamics department into the advanced technology department and started looking at future gazing for design. And that has been my career ever since. I've always worked on new products and starting with a blank sheet of paper and trying to build something from there. Not alone. Okay. Not alone. There's always lots of people in the team.
And I am aware we won't be able to answer all the questions within our time, but I would like just to pick two last questions. One is, give me 1 second, so I lost it. I do apologize. How did you know that was the career path you wanted to take, Chris?
I'll be honest, I didn't. At first, I didn't. And then after that, sort of, you know, you kind of, it is easy to, you know, I think after 9 months, I started to realize, actually, I really enjoy this. And yeah, I actually really enjoy talking to people and presenting them new ideas and things from that side. So that, it took me time. And I'd say that for anyone, sort of, it's not necessarily an immediate thing. Sort of, yeah.
Okay, so but I think that tells us, you know, listen out to not only what you're good at, but what you really enjoy. Because what we do in life, we need to enjoy what we're doing, because we're going to do it for many hours in a day and for potentially many years in our lives. So we need to find enjoyment in what we're doing, don't we? And Catherine, a second last question for you. When did you know that you have what it needs, what you need to have? Was that yeah?
When did I know? Probably when I was 43, and that's when I suddenly realised that actually the way I thought was quite unique. And then I think it was reinforced by I was speaking to a woman from Scottish Enterprise, and I mean, we're talking about looking at intellectual property and sort of trying to get assets sort of protected. And I said to her, well, it's just common sense. And to which she replied, yeah, but it's your common sense. And I think at that point, I thought, yeah, I might actually be quite good at this. So.
Okay. And Chris, the last question for you now is, what's the best thing about your job?
Best thing about my job is knowing that sort of, you know, you're making a difference. So I use my last job, sort of, and then I do a brief example of this, my latest role. So my last role, I know that sort of during the Beast in the East the other year, that there were a lot of worried parents sort of that couldn't find out about sort of whether the school was open, and actually the technology which I was involved with was working. There was a large portion of the technology for sort of some other people which wasn't working, so it was fantastic, able to make a real difference during that period. And the best bit about my job currently at the moment is I know that we're putting in place a lot of solutions to help people recover from why I'm sitting here talking to you from my spare bedroom for the businesses. Sort of you know, allowing people to shop local, but actually not only just shop local, but really help the local communities. So it's actually, if you don't believe, you know, for me, if I don't believe in what I'm doing, it's sort of you know, that, and I think Catherine would completely agree with me. If you can't believe in it, you shouldn't be doing it.
Oh, and I think that's a very nice last answer to, answer to the last question we have time to answer. Catherine, you have asked all the audience for a little task prior to joining this event today. I would love to close our session with you sending that message. Why should they bring a picture? What should they do with it? And why should they do with it? And yeah, and leave it at that.
Well, I think it goes back to this idea about how do you know what you want to do. If you've not got any idea about what career I want to take, I think you should listen to your heart, and you should actually go back to what is it that I really, really enjoy doing. And then worry about the details about where that takes you afterwards. Because if you follow your heart and you do something that you enjoy, then the qualifications will come easier. And I think this is, so for me, no matter what stage you are in your career, I would look at getting a picture, writing down on a piece of paper what 3 things that you really enjoy and 3 things that you think you're really good at. And then every couple of years, add something else into you and put that in an envelope, and every couple of years just add something else in. Anytime you have a success in your life or you really enjoy doing something, add that into your envelope and just turn that envelope over and say, this is me. And whenever anybody tries to, take advice by all means, but whenever you're at a crossroads and you're not sure what to do, open that envelope up and say, who am I? What do I want to do? That's how I would approach it.
So please all do exactly that. I think it's an amazing advice to keep reminding yourself of who you are and what you're good at. And with this, I do apologize, we have been overrunning by 5 minutes, but I thought it was an amazing session. Chris, Catherine, thank you ever so much for your time. Thank you everybody for joining in today. Have a good afternoon and please stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.